and welcome to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs War Room Update. We are on day number 181 of the war with Gaza and day number 180 of Israel's war with Lebanon. Obviously, everything started with the massacre of the 7th of October. Israel started its actions of self-defense against the terrorists in Gaza, and the Iranian proxies in Lebanon immediately joined the fight, attacking Israel from the north. Now, what we've seen really in the last few days are dramatic changes that are taking place. Israel really starting to escalate the war with the Iranians, with the Iranian proxies. And we saw just 2 days ago the targeted killing of a general in the IRGC, in the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the targeted killing of Reza Zahadi, a general, someone who had played an integral part in connecting the Iranian tentacles of all of the different fronts to the brain center in Tehran, and then operating those tentacles around the world. It's Hamas in the south, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah in the north, the Houthis in the south, all of those being guided, directed by the Iranian puppet master, and an integral part of that plot was Reza Zahadi. Today, joining us to give us a little bit of an insight as to what's going on, or a better insight as to what's going on, is Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zahavi of the Alma Center. Sarit, thank you for joining us again. Please give us the updates of what's going on since that targeted killing of Zahadi. As we mentioned just prior to going on to the broadcast, the latest reports in Israel talking about a blanket refusal or postponement of all of the breaks, holidays of all of the combat fighters in the IDF in fear of the Iranian response. This morning there have been substantial, or what appear to be substantial, disruptions to GPS signals. Not clear whether it's electronic warfare by the Iranians or defensive electronic warfare by Israel. Give us a little bit of an insight as to what's going on really as the situation develops.
First, just a few words about the assassination itself. I hope you can hear me. There is a background noise here. I hope it's okay. The war started in October 8th, and since then we have pretty much in the past few months a stable situation of war of attrition, of around 50 attacks every week coming by Hezbollah, using various munitions, anti-tanks, rockets, and drones to the communities next to the border, mainly evacuated communities, as you can see in my map. This means that 60,000 Israelis cannot go back to their homes because we are under fire, because we hardly have shelters, because many of these missiles, like the anti-tanks, cannot be intercepted, and because we are still afraid of another massacre. IDF, for its side, bombed more than 4,000 targets in Lebanon. 10% of these are targets of Radwan brigades, which is the Hezbollah force that is responsible for the mission of invasion into Israel, like Hamas had done in October 7th. This is very encouraging, but it's not completely eliminating the threat. IDF is deployed in the north with 2 divisions in opposed to 1 in routine. And definitely it's not the same situation as it used to be in October 6th. And it's pretty much more of the same, with a little bit of changes with the munition since the war started, and a little bit of feeling of, as you said, escalation. And I can say that we also feel that on our side, even a little bit before the targeted killing in Damascus, a feeling that there is more use of rockets, and rockets are launched in salvos and are launched to further ranges, and that way you see rockets not only into areas that are evacuated. This targeted killing this week is not the first one in Syria. since the war started, there were 18 Iranian officers of the IRGC that were eliminated. Israel never claims responsibility for that. And I think it's a very effective and important tool of war. And we are at war, as I've said. The person that was killed is very important, or was very important, since he is the head of the Northern Front against Israel, of the head of the Syrian-Lebanese front against Israel in the IRGC. And this person is functioning in this position for many, many years. So he has a lot of experience, he's in a key position, and he's the one who is actually making the decisions along with Hezbollah. Nasrallah is definitely a partner in this, not just subordinate. They are making the decisions of where to take this front. So first, it's important to emphasize that it was very important to target this person, this officer, and the fact that the killing was made next to the embassy and was made in Damascus and in daylight maybe can give us an indication about the importance of this person and about the operational opportunity that probably was identified, and that's why we've seen this killing taking place. Now,
sorry,
yes,
go.
As far as I can tell, since this target killing, I can't say that I saw a rise or a change in the modus operandi of the attacks since then, and we feel that everybody is waiting for this change to happen. And there are a few things that we should look at when we talk about it. First, not everything is published with regard to intelligence. What kind of preparations are being made in Hezbollah? What kind of preparations are being made among the IRGC or the Iranian other proxies in the Middle East, whether it's in Syria or in Iraq or even in Yemen? We don't know. But we see more preparations on the Israeli side for a scenario of escalation, and we definitely see more preparations in the past 24 hours, meaning we see, as you said, canceling all the breaks, holiday for Saturday of the regular service soldiers, and we see recruiting of Home Front Command, and we see recruiting of intelligence, and we see recruiting of aerial defense corps. This means that probably somebody knows something that we don't, or understands something that we don't. And I think the first thing that we can conclude is that the Iranian retaliation is probably not only abroad. You know, at first we always thought about equations, that if there will be a retaliation, Iran will try to carry out an attack on one of the embassies outside of Israel. But I think to execute an attack against Israel in Israel, especially if we speak of scenarios of rockets or drones or things like that, or even invasion of one of the militias, not invasion, infiltration of one of the militias along the borders, this is something that is easier to execute than an attack outside of Iran and outside of the region, actually. So that's why we see all these preparations. And of course, here comes the question of war. Look, I still hold my assessment that on the Israeli part, we are not interested in war. And I don't like the use of word escalation with regard to the Israeli policy, because I think that what is happening now, if I'm saying that Israel escalating the situation, I kind of put the responsibility on Israel to what is happening. And eventually we are in kind of a situation that Hezbollah, for example, has no interest to escalate to war, because it has already made Israel evacuate the northern Galilee. So for their part, they want to preserve this situation, that 60,000 Israelis cannot go back home. On the other hand, if we speak of Iran, I'm not sure Iran is interested in war with Israel. Iran is interested in retaliation. When we speak of Israel, I'm not sure that Israel is interested in a full-scale war. Israel is interested in bringing the 60,000 Israelis back home, and if this could be done with military operations that will enable us to gain an achievement without a full-scale war, fine. So we can find ourselves in a situation of war, even though nobody is interested in a full-scale war, while Israel is interested in eliminating or at least decreasing a threat that was built here in the past 17 years, and Hezbollah is interested in preserving the current situation.
It's incredible to hear, Sarit, that we really are in a situation where it would appear that nobody really wanted this war. Israel, as you say, we weren't interested in this war. We didn't start the war. We weren't on the 6th of October. Israel was happy enjoying the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, and there wasn't really a thought of launching a war against Iran, against Hezbollah, against Hamas. And then came along the October 7 massacre, and almost immediately Hezbollah joins the fight. There was no beef between Israel and Hezbollah. There was no real reason for them to get involved. Similar to that with the Houthis in the south and the Iranians. But and whilst you suggest that really no one, including the Hezbollah and Iran, aren't interested in the war, it's that old statement of Golda Meir: if our enemies lay down their arms, there will be peace. But if Israel lays down its arms, it will be destroyed. So where do we draw that line between? When can we honestly say that Hezbollah and Iran are no longer interested in fighting, and what would be the conditions that we would have to create in order to get to that position?
Just, I don't think that Iran or Hezbollah were not interested in war in October 6th. I think that Iran was not interested in war in Iran, okay? That's why it built all these proxies in the Middle East, so it will be capable of managing war against Israel without involving the Iranian soul itself. I don't think that Hezbollah was not interested in war with Israel before October 6th. I think it was completely prepared to war against Israel in order to gain more control over Lebanon. And we've seen the escalation, the gradual escalation on the northern border, on the Israeli-Lebanese border in the year before Hamas attack every day.
It's the signing of the gas deal that was meant to bring about peace.
Even before the gas deal. It started before the gas deal. Of course, it's accelerated after the gas deal. We've seen the buildup of positions, and we've seen the military operatives well prepared on the border, and the gathering of intelligence, and the clashes with the IDF soldiers building the wall, and the rockets launching, and the anti-tank launching, and all of that happened before October 7th. So Hezbollah wanted to escalate war. I think that the first priority of these players, Hezbollah and Iran, was that Israel will initiate the war due to all these terrorist attacks and provocations, and Israel didn't play according to what they wanted, and eventually Hamas carried out this massacre with or without coordinations with the Iranian. I think with, but okay, I'm the only one who thinks like that.
I'm not sure you're the only one who thinks like that. not sure at all.
I think that Hezbollah and Iran disappointed Hamas and not vice versa, and I think it was the easiest way for Iran to sacrifice Hamas and tell them, you want to go, fine, do whatever you want, no problem. They gave them the munition, the money, the training, and they, for them, it was a cheap life cost sacrificing Palestinians rather than Shiite Lebanese of Hezbollah. But the bottom line is that I'm saying that today, nobody is interested to initiate a full-scale war, and that's the difference. Okay, Hezbollah, if Israel will initiate war, it will play according to what Hezbollah wanted at first place. As I've said, it doesn't care that Lebanon will be destroyed. If it is looking 17 years backwards after Lebanon was destroyed the previous time, Hezbollah became much stronger. For Hezbollah, there is an opportunity here to take over Lebanon. And for Iran, it's an opportunity to strengthen its stronghold in the Middle East, in Lebanon as well, and in other places, with all the cost of lives we are talking about.
I just
But
have to
they
ask
don't want to
a question
initiate
on
it.
that.
Why would they want to initiate it if they believe that Israel will initiate it? And Israel doesn't want to initiate it. So that's why we find ourselves in this awkward situation.
I don't understand that, sorry. What you're saying, if I understood correctly, is that Hezbollah believes that Israel initiating a war in Lebanon will facilitate Hezbollah's expanding its control over Lebanon. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, I'll explain. Look at the previous war in 2006. Okay? What happened? Hezbollah lost the support of Lebanese, yes. Lebanon was destroyed, most of it. There was used damage, yes. Okay. How much time it took them to recover? Few
3
years.
years.
Few years. Okay. After 17 years, if you look backward 17 years, is Hezbollah stronger than it used to be since 2006? Yes. Much stronger than it used to be. So they are willing to pay the price of a lot of destruction and humans' lives to make Lebanon an Islamic state. This is what they want to achieve. They got to a dead end in the political system in Lebanon. Now it's the best timing to create a conflict with Israel.
So really, there is very little difference between Hamas and Hezbollah on that point. That neither one of them really has any type of respect for either the host territory or the people of that country. Both
people,
of them
it's not a hosting
expendable.
territory. It's not a hosting territory. It's their people.
Hezbollah and Lebanon are one in the same, if for most intents and purposes, correct. So just explain to me. I tried to get into this a few days ago as well. Explain to me, what are the Americans seeing in Lebanon that you and I and I think dozens and scores of other analysts aren't seeing? The Americans, the US administration is still paying the salaries of the Lebanese army in this like illusion that the Lebanese army will fight against Hezbollah on Israel's behalf. Is that even a possibility? What are they seeing that we're not seeing?
I think they see hope, and I think they are more optimistic than me. And the bottom line, I think that what they see is their interest. And
They see hope in what? Sorry,
hope to Lebanon.
to change Lebanon. The Lebanese are supporters of Hezbollah, as we said. Hezbollah is from Lebanon. It's part of Lebanon, enjoys the support of the Lebanese people.
So I want to explain. Look, the goal of the international community is to get to a ceasefire as quickly as possible, whether it's in Gaza or in the north. The goal of Israel is to create a different security reality and to make sure that we are not going to be surprised again. And these are two different goals, because ceasefire doesn't mean peace, and it doesn't mean that the threat was eliminated. And what I believe is that, or what I assess is that even if a ceasefire will be achieved in Gaza and Hezbollah will join to this ceasefire, which I believe Hezbollah will join to a ceasefire once it will be achieved in Gaza, it doesn't mean that it will last forever. And it doesn't mean that Hezbollah will not initiate another massacre. What we have all learned from October 7th is that when you have enemies that want to destroy the state of Israel and they don't cherish life, they cherish death, eventually they will use the capabilities that they have built for years. And we cannot enable another scenario like that to happen. We cannot enable the people in northern Israel, doesn't matter if they live 5 kilometers from the border and evacuated, or like myself, 9 kilometers from the border and not evacuated, to live under the threat of missiles and rockets and anti-tanks and UAVs like we are living now, like the people of the south lived for 18 years. And then eventually, after a few years, doesn't matter, nobody knows exactly how long, will be massacred. And to tell you the truth, as a former intelligence officer, I can tell you that this can happen again. with all the lessons that IDF will learn and preparations and whatever, it can happen again. Because to give an alert to something that is well prepared, like to give an alert to a murderer that is holding a gun against you and his finger is already on the trigger, it's almost impossible. And I'm saying that as an ex-alert officer, okay? So eventually the only solution, and I'm doing like this because there are no true solutions, but the only solution is to damage the threat itself, at least decrease, if not eliminate it completely, but at least decrease the threat. And I think this is what the state of Israel is trying to do, and this is what was done with the targeted killing in Damascus. This is part of a campaign to reduce the threat. While international community desire to get to a ceasefire, I think that the state of Israel should try to get this ceasefire in the best terms possible. Because if this ceasefire will eventually will be under the terms that we've seen 17 years ago of resolution, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, this is going to bring us to the same point.
So 1701, as you mentioned, 1701 was never implemented in any of its forms. 1701 discussed Hezbollah retreating to above the Litani and the entrance of the Lebanese army.
And there is no enforcement, and there is no deadline.
It discussed the limitation of arms going into Lebanon as well. That was never enforced. That 1701 was really appeasement of ourselves in the idea that possibly something could happen, but really nothing happened. So going back to that situation and going back to that failed paradigm would seem to be truly a waste of time, even though the detractors would say, well, but you did enjoy 17 years of quiet. So
there is a difference between what I evaluate that will happen to what I want to happen. Okay, I want to have a different kind of a ceasefire, which is not 1701, which is better than 1701, where we have a deadline, when we have an effective enforcement mechanism, when we have not a pushback or withdrawal, we have truly disarming of Hezbollah military capabilities in South Lebanon. I know this cannot be achieved. I know that any diplomatic agreement eventually will go along the lines of 1701, this way or another, and will not be effective. And that's why eventually, and I think the state of Israel understands that as well, and that's why eventually the Israeli policy, as you see it, you called it escalation, I call it trying to gain as many military achievements as possible until there is a ceasefire, which we cannot achieve in the terms that we want to. And if what Israel is doing now eventually will drag us into an unwanted war, okay, we'll have to be prepared, but I don't think we want to initiate it.
I think we're already in that unwanted war. We're already in the situation.
But not a full-scale one. None of the sides is using all of its capabilities. This is definitely a war, from my very personal experience. But it's not a full-scale war. None of the sides is using its full capabilities here.
To the extent that Hezbollah is really just waiting, as it were, to take the decision to expand the attacks, to use longer range missiles that they have many of them, and exact missiles as well. What do you think will be the next steps really just in the coming days? Will we see an escalation? You opened by saying that despite the assassination, despite the targeted killing, we haven't seen really a change in the actions of Hezbollah on the border for the moment. Do you think for the moment, do you think that is something which is more likely to change? At the moment, we don't have enough information to even give an assessment like that. Where do we stand just with Hezbollah in the next even 96 hours?
The answer is that I don't know, because as you said, this information is probably not in the OSINT, in the open sources. The only thing I can say is that tomorrow is very interesting, because tomorrow is the fourth Friday of Ramadan, which is mentioned all over the Middle East among those who are part of the Iranian Shiite axis as the Iranian Jerusalem Day. And when I've said Iranian Shiite axis, I didn't mean necessarily Shiites. It could be Sunni Hamas or Sunni other Palestinian factions. So this day has a potential to escalate. I'm not sure that it will happen. Maybe because it's too expected and Israel is prepared, you will see nothing happening now and things will happen later. Or you may see something happening now. But I'm saying that we do see a lot of preparations on the Israeli side, and this is probably an indication that there is a will among the Iranians to retaliate to the target killing in Damascus, and a lot of precautions are taken here. So the next 96 hours are going to be extremely tense. And, what can I say as a resident of the North? We are praying that it will not go out of control completely. But we don't know. We don't have information to tell you they are going to go in this path or another.
So what can you tell us just about put Hezbollah for a second at the side. What can you tell us about the Iranian capabilities, both of the militia forces that they have on the ground in Syria and of their arsenal of weaponry, even ballistic missiles, where I'd seen reports that Iran would potentially use ballistic missiles now to attack Israel directly. Is that something that is a capability that they have? What is and we all know that Iran has quite an extensive ballistic missile arsenal. To what extent do you think that is something which is a reasonable danger and really possible circumstance that's going to develop?
Completely reasonable. Let's put things in proportion. Everything that exists in Lebanon, all the capabilities exist in Syria, but not at the same numbers. So we don't know how many missiles and rockets of Iran and its proxies exist in Syria, but probably much less than in Lebanon. Having said that, Iran is holding a few militias in Syria that participated in the fightings of the civil war in Syria. It means that they are experienced in urban fighting. And they are also a tool, by the way, also some units of Hezbollah next to the border with Israel. And they are also a tool to fight against Israel if they get the order. So you have the artillery threat and missile threat, and you have, again, the threat of an infiltration. From Iran itself, it's not only missiles, it could be drones as well. Drones can get to different kind of ranges. Iran is pretty far. I think that to succeed with drones, you need to launch more than just one or two or three. You need to create salvos. They also have drones in Iraq. They have drones in Syria. Every day, by the way, in the past few weeks, every day we see statements of the factions of Iran in Iraq that they launched drones to Israel, and nobody knows what happened to these drones because we don't see any indication in Israel. So this is very interesting.
Is that something?
We cannot.
Is it just bravado, or are they actually launching drones?
We don't know.
That then fall.
It's either false. It's either false, or they are launching drones and they don't get to the region. They are falling on their way here. We don't know. But what I'm trying to say is that Iran has various ways and various means to operate against Israel, in Israel, as I've said, not only abroad. And we don't have the intelligence to know which one it will choose. And of course, we also don't have the capability to assess whether it will succeed, because it is clear to all of us that IDF is not sitting still just waiting for the retaliation. It is taking steps in passive defense and active defense. And if we will see that nothing will happen in the next 96 hours, it doesn't necessarily mean that Iran didn't want anything to happen. It may also mean that somebody prevented it from happening.
So now
I'm sorry for a lot of uncertainties.
We have that situation that's almost akin to the what's called the waiting period in Israel. In 19 1967, from the moment that the Egyptians expelled the UN observers and peacekeepers from the Sinai, closing the Straits of Tiran as well, and then really waiting for that war to happen, and obviously Israel responding with their preemptive strike on the 5th of June 1967. So really we appear to be in that position again, being attacked from the south, attacked from the north, and now waiting for the response of Iran to the assassination. It would appear that this is quite a dark time for Israel.
It's a dark time since October 7th. It's a dark time until all the hostages will be back.
Without question, all of those added ingredients when you put them in, but it seemed to be that there's something that is it a question of Israel not being able to take the initiative? Should we start the war in Lebanon? Because as you said, Hezbollah is not under any, I would believe, under any circumstances, truthfully going to redeploy, disband itself, definitely not, even redeploy above the Litani within Lebanon, is not going to give up on its weapons arsenal. Over 180,000, over 200,000 missiles, rockets, right?
Look, there are three contradicted clocks here that are ticking. One is the clock of the Americans that have said they want a ceasefire because there are elections by the end of the year. The other one is the Israeli clock that needs to bring the children back to school in the north in September 1st. And the third one, which we don't know exactly what it is, it's the Iranian clock. The big question mark here is what Iran wants. It seems to us that Iran is not interested in a quick campaign that will end up in a failure. Iran is interested in a slow and long campaign that will end up with a success, and a success for Iran is the elimination of the State of Israel. And I think that the Iranians understand that if they will have a quick campaign, that they will initiate, as I've said, no legitimacy from international community, they will not achieve what they want. And that's why they wanted to drag Israel into war, while, as you said, it is in dark times after a war in Gaza, after there are a lot of pressures on the Israeli government from inside and outside. This is something that Iran, a situation that Iran strives to preserve and even make it more and more serious and deteriorate. But slowly.
But if we look at the actions and reactions of the international community, specifically those led by the Biden administration, it would appear that whilst Hamas definitely didn't have the legitimacy to carry out the massacre, in the 6 months that have passed since then, that understanding has been turned on its head. And now the US administration seems to be only focusing on Israel and demanding that Israel stop in its war against these genocidal terrorists. The same appears to be the case with Hezbollah. We didn't initiate the war, but we seem to be being held, restrained there, and prevented from really expanding our actions of self-defense against, again, a genocidal Iranian proxy, and the same with Iran. So maybe Iran's looking on and saying, well, even if we attack Israel, possibly we will suffer momentary condemnation from some of the international community, but over time, the world will turn against Israel as it has done in its fight against Hamas and Hezbollah. Could that be part of the lesson that the Iranians at least are learning?
Definitely. Moreover, I'm not sure that they believe that they will be targeted in Tehran. Look what is happening in Ukraine. There is war in Europe, in Ukraine, in the past 2 years, and nobody is attacking Moscow. That's the lesson that is learned in Tehran, that they can send their proxies and get out of it.
That seems to be exactly the case. The Iranians are certainly learning from the actions of the Europeans and the US that violence actually pays off. There is no price really to attacking Israel, attacking even the West, because it's something that can be done. Possibly they're looking at Russia and saying, well, the sanctions even against Russia haven't held up. They haven't brought Russia to its knees. The war in the Ukraine is carrying on. We can continue on with what we're doing, and that will be fine. Really, what they saw also, a recent study that I saw showed a direct correlation, or what appeared to be a direct correlation between the effectiveness of the sanctions against Iran and their development of missiles, nuclear weapons, and their race for nuclear capabilities. And really, at the moment, we're seeing from the trajectory of the enforcement of the sanctions for 3 or 4 years, 2016, 2020. For the last 4 years, we've seen that trajectory changing with the approach of specifically the U.S. administration, possibly emboldening the terrorists. The deal that we saw just before the 7th of October to bring about the freeing of the U.S. hostages in return for the release of $6 billion. That it seems to be that the Iranians are looking on and saying, well, violence actually works.
They're right.
That seems to be really the unfortunate message that the West is providing. And to what extent do you think, now let's focus a little bit more on Israel, to what extent do you think that Israel has that desire to really open that second substantial front with Hezbollah? We have to take the war really to them. If we understand that they are not going to disband themselves, they're not going to give up on their weapons, they're going to keep their forces in the south, they're going to keep the Radwan forces, those stormtroopers, as it were, to infiltrate Israel and carry out another massacre. Surely at some stage Israel will have to go on a substantial offensive there as well.
I don't think that war is a walk in the park. We are here making a discussion between a bad option to another bad option to another bad option. Okay? If we'll end up in war, as you said, we don't have any understanding from international community why we are doing that. How many people know that we have 60,000 Israelis evacuated and that we are under fire every day? How many people know that? Thousands of trajectories were launched to the north since October 8th. How many people know that there is an open front in the north for Israel? How many people know that? How many leaders truly understand what everything I've just said mean for Israelis? Very little.
So here, if I may just interrupt you, Sarit, for a little plug. For those of our viewers who are interested in learning more, or are interested in seeing more, go to alma.org, right? Or
Israel-alma.org.
Israel.alma.org.
Israel-alma.org. Israel-alma.org.
I cannot stress the importance of, and really the benefit of going on to Sarit's site, onto the Alma site, and to getting that deeper understanding of what's going on in the north. Share it with as many people as you can, because that understanding of what exactly the situation in the north is part of creating the terms for Israel to defend itself. That is part of the broadening of the understanding of there is a war in the north, and it's just not being discussed. It's just not being reported on. Thousands of missiles being shot at Israel. Israel responding. Over 300 Hezbollah terrorists who have been killed. That war is raging on. It's just not the focus of the international press, and it's certainly not in any of their interest to explain to what extent Israel is suffering from that war. But on the other hand, it is certainly in Israel's interest that as many people as possible know the details, know as much as they can about what's going on there, and share it with your friends, share it with anyone you can. Israel/alma.org. That's where you can find that information. Sarit, as I tried to do, despite the content of some of these briefings, leave us with a positive message that you can see going forward.
Well, I'll give you even two.
Excellent. Even better. Saved me one.
First, following what you said, I think that the solution, which is not immediate, lies in the alliance between Israelis and Americans, and Israelis and Europeans, and Israelis and Australians. And I think that if we will find a way to work together against terror and not leave the campaign against terror only to the State of Israel, things will get better. Because what we are dealing with is a radical ideology that is not only about Israel. Its mission is to spread the Islamic Revolution values all over the world. And that's why it's not just Israel's problem whether Iran has nuclear weapons or not, and whether Hamas attack Israel in the south or not. It's everybody's problem. And if we will work together, less people will get killed, and we will be able to change. I strongly believe in this, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I strongly believe in this. And second, from the very personal point of view, Nasrallah, I think, and our enemies believed that once there is war here and that we are under threat, Israelis will pack their suitcases and leave, and this will be the end of the Zionist movement. And what they have learned is that Israelis packed their suitcases and left from areas around the globe to come back to Israel and defend it in October 7th. And this is something they didn't take in consideration. The Jewish people is here earlier than anybody else. The Jewish people is here for 3,000 years, and we don't plan to disappear. We don't have any other choice. So we will do what it takes. We are trying to do it with as less casualties as possible, by the way, to every side. But we will survive whatever it takes, because we don't have too many options.
That is indeed it, Sarita. This is our homeland. This is our ancestral homeland. This is where we Jews have been living for 3,000 years, and really we've experienced that event of traveling the globe, and we've seen its disastrous consequences. We have nowhere else to go, and so we will keep on fighting. And from around the world, the Jews, as you said, have been coming back home in order to help defend Israel. We hope that that it will indeed bring about a more positive time, and that we'll get through, at least through the next 96 hours, next week, next month, a little bit more with a little bit more of a positive message. Until then, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us again. We will see you again next week. Stay tuned for the developments as they come down the tube. In the meantime, keep safe, everyone, and keep well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.